This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome into B-Town's continuing coverage of the impact of COVID-19 here in Rhode Island. I'm Bill Bartholomew. On today's episode, assessing Rhode Island's restaurant and hospitality industry with Eat Drink RI's Dave Dadekian. It's scary because, for me personally, as a musician, I'm number one, like my whole season's been canceled. And my partners, I suppose, if you will, in Newport, some of them are saying they're not going to reopen. And so I'm just trying to figure out how to reinvent the wheel here. It's unbelievable. I would never have guessed 6 months ago that the infrastructure could collapse so quickly, but
exactly.
It's wild. So
the event business is, I don't think we've focused on it enough yet because everything's so immediate, but the event business is going to be affected for a long, long time. I mean, my festival was obviously canceled. My events get, the dinners, around, 100 people, and the bigger events, 400 or 500 people. And I don't know when I'll be able to do that again. Yeah,
it's wild. In fact, I had somebody write yesterday. I asked the governor about Rhythm and Roots Festival. So the organizers of Rhythm and Roots wrote and said, hey, can you ask if there's any advice on late summer autumn events? And, she said she doesn't really know. She doesn't have a good answer, but basically you could derive that it's not going to happen. There's no way that there's going to be a large event. I posted that, and then I had someone who's a caterer kind of come after me on Facebook, and I said, look, I don't have an opinion. This actually completely undermines my bottom line, but it's kind of what we're facing.
Yeah, no, I have several friends who are caterers. I've talked to a bunch more, and that's really crippling. At least restaurants, we don't know what's going to happen, but there's a chance of opening at some phased level. But catering, no. I mean, weddings, I just or any corporate event. My friend Mark, who runs Fireworks Catering, he does corporate lunches every day. All that's gone. Yeah, it's crazy.
What's your instinct on the health fiscally? And it's kind of a rude way to put it, how much people have for reserves or whatever. But do you think by and large, some people are saying we're going to lose 50% of restaurants. Some people are saying higher. Some people are saying that restaurants actually are nimble outside of rent and payroll, that there's an ability to, whether it's a 2-month break or a year break, that's not really the big death blow for a lot of restaurants either because their cash reserves are there. What's your take on that?
Well, I wouldn't say cash reserves are there. No, nimble, yes. There is, a lot of that type of, I'll figure it out attitude and I'll stick at it. I think if landlords are accepting, maybe the tax system is accepting, obviously the guests here are fantastic. The clientele is great. It's hard to say so far. I don't know. But truthfully, the margins of restaurants have been and always have been traditionally, sadly, extraordinarily low. And when you're dealing with that, people talked about last month, and now it's coming up again, I think, next week, the sales tax.
Yeah. And,
could the state defer the sales tax for a month? And the general consensus out of Commerce was, this is, any business takes in their sales tax. They don't spend their sales tax. They set it aside. Well, unfortunately, truthfully, small businesses expect there to be more sales. So they spend their sales tax money knowing there'll be more income coming in to pay their sales tax money. And that's not how you're supposed to do it, obviously. You're supposed to set that aside so that doesn't occur, but that's the reality. And restaurants just don't have these margins. What I think has been interesting to see, sometimes, because I'm so into my sector and what I do, I don't think about it this way, but it's been fascinating having conversations with other businesses. Getting these phone calls with folks from Commerce and they'll bring in, lawyers and accountants and insurance people and all these other businesses that I don't interact with on a regular basis. And when it comes up that, the margin on a restaurant can be, like 4 or 5%, like these other businesses are like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Like, why would you have a restaurant?
Right.
And unfortunately, the restaurant industry has kind of been complicit in this in an odd way, in that we've tried to keep prices down. We've tried to, make the experience affordable to everyone. And the reality is food costs have gone up 15% like every 5 years. And restaurant prices definitely haven't gone up 15% every 5 years, let alone, all the other stuff that a restaurant has to pay for, utilities, rent, equipment maintenance, linen rentals, glassware breakage, things of that nature. All that goes up, and restaurant prices creep up, definitely, but not what they should be. Now, the flip side of that is the general consumer out there, the middle class wage maker, making enough money in their salary to afford a restaurant going up? And I think that's a big problem. I mean, let's I think if anything, this crisis has shown us that, not that we didn't already know this, but maybe we actually have a chance for change here, that people aren't paid enough. They don't make enough money.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think the area for me that's been that's eye-opening or interesting. There was a lot of complaints about people who are in the gig economy, which is the bread and butter in a lot of ways of our state. Yeah. Let's be real. And then trying to tap into unemployment resources. And look, if you, from putting on my musician hat, performing in restaurants, especially in Newport, but also places in Providence that have live music, in greater Providence, which for me, that's 75% of my income, I'd gladly pay into a fund. I have my own IRA that I pay into. I mean, I'm just doing the best I can, but I would gladly pay into the system, but you'd have to raise compensation. Now, I'm also not willing to go to most of the partners that I work with in restaurants and say, hey, look, we got to double what you're paying live music because I want to be able to pay into, a reserve fund of some kind. But at the same time, it's that question of consumer, can they spend more on the business so that the business can then be more sustainable in terms of each individual worker being able to kind of fend for themselves, for lack of a better term, when there is a dip.
Yeah. No, that's it. Yeah.
Are you seeing significant or hearing from restaurants statewide? Is there a significant difference between what the coastal scene is facing and what maybe the Providence restaurant scene is facing in terms of rebound based on the amount of tourist dollars that usually are accounted for in the coastal industry?
The conversations have started to happen. I think it's becoming more apparent to the coastal and towns that it's going to be a bad year. And, as well as I do, especially if you perform in Newport, often that May to October is basically the year. You have to make a year's worth of income in that time to really sustain yourself for the rest of the year. And so it's becoming more obvious that it's just not going to work very well this year. Providence is getting the hit now, especially next month. The next few weeks would have been, RISD, Brown, PC, all the commencements, Johnson & Wales. And that's always a huge influx, especially, the Brown one. That's a big weekend in Providence. So, yeah, the losses are definitely felt. I don't really, I've had some conversations with them, tourism folks. I don't really know what the status is with the hotels, other than obviously they're, most of them are closed. But I have to assume that the hotel industry is suffering greatly.
Yeah, just going to be wild to get out of this. That's what's going to be, the time frame. Some people are hoping that I had a Westerly Town Councilman last night, Caswell Cook here on my live stream, telling me that he expects thousands of people on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
And on Musquamacut Beach, based on the notion that, he literally said, the chief of police of Westerly says, we can't enforce it. There's not enough DEM police to enforce it, so we'll just let it be. So I think there's some people hoping that there's just going to be some kind of rebellion, silent rebellion, and then that'll stimulate the economy. I mean, I don't know how realistic that is, though.
I don't know in situations like that. That is, but it's true. I mean, how do the police enforce, thousands of people coming onto a beach? I mean, it's difficult. I'm curious to see what DEM comes up with for the reopenings of the beaches and the parks. I talk with Ken Ayers all the time. He has a couple times a week, conference call on the food and agriculture side of DEM. So he'll mention them because they do some farmers markets in Lake Otter Park and other state parks. but no indication yet what the plan is there. So I know it's weighs heavily on their minds.
What's your instinct as far as, I guess, just, anyone that there's some restaurants in Elmwood, for example, that I know were about to open and never actually opened their doors. Do you think those places will ever get off the ground, or do they have a better shot because they haven't opened their doors yet?
It really depends on if they, had capital reserve set aside to open, and how their landlords are treating them. Because they have a slightly better shot in the fact that they haven't already established a lot of accounts that they have due, purveyors and utilities and all the rest. But it's I hate saying I don't know all the time.
Yeah, of course.
But,
yeah,
but there's a lot of it. It really is. You've got great questions. Publix Radio, and I had an interview last week. WPRI had an interview this week, and a lot of times I just have to say I don't know. We don't know how long this is really going to last. We don't know what it means after it's over. When the opening starts again, we need the guidance from the governor's office. Commerce is thinking about these things. I know I've been on those conference calls as well, and it's really, those calls are, again, they're good because I can hear from these other industries. I understand these other sectors. It's like, one of the heads of Citizens Bank was talking the other day about, are they supposed to tempt people, when they come in the doors? And, that office in Johnston has hundreds, if not thousands of workers. Like, to realize that that's part of this opening again is just a massive undertaking.
Yeah, I saw something. Joe Paolino's got some kind of heat sensor technology when you walk into his building. I saw an article, it might have been in like the New York Post or something like that last night, where there was an Italian restaurant set up with essentially spit shields and glass in between so you're sitting at the table and the person across from you, there's a big piece of plexiglass there. You have to reach around to, pass the bread or whatever it is. I wonder if people would rather just hold off for 6 months or a year and then come back to something a little bit less draconian than that.
Yeah, well, I think that's going to be a big question. Is even if we, let's just pick a random date, July 1st. Even if we open up places on July 1st at 50% capacity, the tables are 6-7 feet apart, are guests going to come? Not because they don't love and support these restaurants, but is that an experience they're either, comfortable in, or just, don't want to, see a server with a mask on? There's a lot of questions.
Absolutely. All right. Switching gears a little bit from, kind of your independent media hat, I suppose. Independent media it's becoming, especially as, look, there's going to be changes in corporate media or big media, however you want to call it. Corporate media is a little bit rude because, there are human beings there. There's great journalists that work at these, quote unquote corporations. But I'm finding that some people, I guess the reception of the greater public to independent media outlets seems to have increased a lot more than maybe I would have even realized, whether, not that, look, most people are watching Channel 10 or 12 when the press conference is on, or listening on WPRO or Publix Radio. That's probably true. But when it comes to analysis and specifics, I sense that people are seeking out, I want to see what Eli Sherman has to say about this, or I want to see what a particular publication has to say about this more and more and more. It's almost like that craft beer, craft food applying to journalism now. You've been at this for a while, and you've built a relatively massive audience, a significant percentage of the media audience here in the market. So what's your advice to independent media outlets and big media outlets about adapting in this moment right here?
Well, it's a big question. I mean, to me, it's about, I think, like you said, I think niche is an overused word, because obviously we all have our interests and our things that we're focused on, but those niches that people are gravitating towards are they get bigger all the time, and people the general public want to find a source that they can trust and enjoy reading or watching or listening to. And so we've all kind of headed in this direction of building our own brand and personality. I mean, your show's a great example of that, to reach the best audience that we can reach. And, I'm sure it's interesting. We have this conversation. You mentioned a bunch of great folks that I've, worked with as well. And we're the ones that have survived. I'm sure there's a lot out there that haven't, sadly, or, people who've, I'm going to start a site or start a podcast. And then after, 2-3 episodes, it drops off. And believe me, I don't envy you on that. I mean, you of all people, I'm sure you understand what time consumption is.
Oh yeah.
To your life. Yeah. I mean, you've got a show almost every day, that, I'm sure it takes up a huge chunk of your time. So I don't know that I have advice so much as, this kind of the standards is, be authentic, be, true to your audience. If you make an error, be honest about it. All the things that are, kind of decency type things. And I think people get that, and they get that level of authenticity. Now, unfortunately, there's also some sites and television networks that, we even have some here in Rhode Island that aren't very good. I'll put it nicely.
Yeah, you can imagine who we're discussing there, and I've tried to stay out of that fray as well, and I've come so close sometimes to getting specific in my responses and everything, but it's almost better to stay out of that sandbox and just let it pass by, if you will.
I think it's better to rise above. It's not always easy, but I think it's better to take the high road. The unfortunate part of that is they also have large audiences that believe the falsehoods. I mean, the lies in the case of going up to the president. I mean, that's that's an amazing thing to me that people don't just call it what it is sometimes. I mean, that's the reality of the landscape we're in, and people have the ability to do what you're doing, what I'm doing, what lots of small journalists are doing. And the flip side is people have the ability to do that for bad as well. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Yeah. I mean, we see it in the press conferences here with the governor, where there's outlets that I had no idea existed. I don't even know what the Rhode Island Echo is. I'm curious now. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, so, I've seen that one over the years, but I don't know too much about it. Obviously I've spoken to folks like Richard Asanoff.
Yep.
It's basically a one-man show like myself. It's funny you bring that up because Josh Block and I have gone back and forth in email a bit. He doesn't consider me someone who can join the press conferences.
Really? So you've been denied access?
Yeah.
Wait a second. Now that's interesting because, wow, that's fascinating. So I've wondered how they've been managing this. There were some people and I sort of just jumped in that Sunday morning when the governor declared, look, we're having a press conference on a Sunday, day one of this experience, so to speak. And I was there, and it was kind of the standard press corps: Latino Public Radio, WPRO, Publix Radio, the three television stations, the 2 newspapers. I think the Woonsocket Call was there, and I was there. And that was the case for the whole time it was an in-person event. Then, as it became an online event, you started to see the number grow. And I believe appropriately. All of a sudden, What's Up Noop's in there. Yeah. And all of a sudden, Newport Buzz. And I should also note, Motif Magazine was Mike Billow was there for the
Yeah, they're great.
I think that robust perspective is valuable. Now, Channel 12, again, they do great work. I don't have a television. I haven't had a television since 2006. So I have never seen more other than on silent in a bar. Yeah, I just watch it online. Yeah, exactly. Right. They do great work there. To me, a digital outlet, because that's how I consume them.
I completely agree. Yeah.
So I don't see a huge distinction between, in the context of a press conference, although, again, he's a great journalist and someone I admire in a lot of ways, Ted Nesi and, you. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm a little more focused on certain things. I certainly don't have the politics breath that Ted does or things of that nature. It's funny. So when this all started, when the press conference and everything were, live and didn't, I would watch it, but it was so new and everything that I thought, well, if I had a question, and I did a couple times, I just texted Ted, and Ted would ask it.
Yeah.
Or Ian, or Dan, or whoever that I was happened to be corresponding with that morning. I was like, hey, if you get a chance, can you ask the governor about this unemployment thing?
Yeah.
When it went to the online, or whatever you want to call it, the distance format, and there were so many more in it. I think it was Ian responded back to me. He's like, I'm having a hard time getting questions in. Sorry. So I just sent an email to Josh. We've gone back and forth a couple times. I'm not. He's like, if you really want to get a question, and you send it to Matt at Commerce, which Matt and I email all the time, but I don't see why the Commerce press guy is really my avenue. But
yeah,
maybe Josh will watch this and reconsider. I don't know. I mean, truthfully, and I haven't used it yet because I don't want to be obnoxious about it, but several of our colleagues in the media have sent me the email in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're like, hey, you got anything you want to ask? Here, just go ahead and put it in. And I'm like, because I reach a pretty broad audience, and and I certainly, from a food and drink perspective, there are a lot of questions that my colleagues have that they don't know how to ask, and I can. I've certainly several times over the last couple of weeks gotten a question from a restaurant owner and sent it along to either DLT or whoever the question was for, and got an answer back. Usually within a day. DVR has been great.
Yeah.
But a couple times I've thought, well, this should be a question that everyone out there hears the answer to.
Yeah. No, I think so completely. I mean, I guess that's what I was sort of alluding to with Ted. With Ted Nesi, is that, there are specific questions that he's asking that are important, but so too are questions surrounding the hospitality industry, and particularly restaurants, and it's a balancing act. Yeah, I wonder what will happen.
Yeah, it's no way to take everyone's question. I get that. There's a limited amount of time, but questions like Steve's. I love Steve's questions. Steve Alquist. Maybe in the grand scheme of things, there are other questions that might need to come to the top. But it's important to have it out there.
Yeah, no question about it. I wonder what will happen if and when, obviously Jim Hummel yesterday asked the governor, hey, are you planning on opening up the press conferences again to in-person events? And, you wonder if after May 8th or June 7th or whatever the date is that they lift the shelter in place, if they will go back to in-person, even outdoor press conferences, right. Who gets the invite to that? How many, do you create a rotation? Do you have 40 or 50 people who are there on the call, or I guess in the email, whatever you want to call it, press conference, the distant press conference? Are they all going to show up? Are they going to have that opportunity? So it'll be interesting to see how that's narrowed down, and who the players are, so to speak. And, let's just hope they don't pick favorites. Hopefully they draw names out of a hat. And I think there should be one, if that's the case, it should be one reporter per outlet. Again, WPRO or my radio partner. And, when you have four voices from one outlet, it's not the best look if you're not getting other voices.
I agree. I mean, I think, to some extent, again, it's categories. I can understand if, Walter, someone, or, from Channel 12 is there, and someone more focused on health or business issues than investigative stuff. I can understand having multiple people in that sense. But there does need to be some type of fairness. I'm not exactly sure how that is sometimes, but it's a balancing act.
Yeah, and hopefully we're not doing daily press conferences, a year from now as well.
Yeah, I mean let's put it that way, right? Right, exactly. We'd like to not have daily press conferences, right?
Definitely. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they go to look, we'll do every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We'll check in with you, and the other days we'll send out a briefing. Who knows what's going to happen?
This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast.
For updates on COVID-19's impact here in Rhode Island, plus a back catalog of nearly 200 episodes featuring some of your favorite Rhode Island media personalities, artists, and politicos, head over to ripodcast.com or search Bartholomew Town on your favorite podcast app.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.